Some of you know that for the last 12 years, I've been involved in a project that supports folks who have a label of autism. And these 22 people, I think 21 of them have no way of communicating in a systematic way. So it's not just that they don't talk, but they don't have other, they don't type, they don't have a communication system that's just beyond their own rudimentary system with minimal signs. And so it was a whole new territory for me to be deeply engaged with people who you can't talk to or ask questions. And it was a very profound, it's been a very profound experience. And in the process, I developed a very close relationship with a man named Ken that some of you have heard about. And he is one of those people who has very limited ways to tell you what's going on for him, and he's a young man who has had a very deprived life especially in the last 10 years. And he was seen as somebody who was violent and aggressive, and he was locked down for like 7 years in a very bare space. He was in the community, but within the community, he lived in sort of a prison-like environment. And when I met him, something very powerful happened between us. And we had this connection that was on a whole other level. And I'd never had that kind of experience in all my career, my whole life, where it was so immediate. And I felt like he had decided to connect in a really deep way when he met me. And it's literally 10 years later or 11 years later. And we have a very close relationship, and his life has changed a lot in positive ways, but he still has times where it takes a lot of creativity to support him. And last week, I don't know how many of you attended the Gaia day on Friday. I was listening to Peter Senge, and it just was so powerful to hear him talk about the fact that we all have this vast ability to know that is not verbal. And he talked about this idea of knowing that is beyond theory or words. And it's an integration of, that we have this tendency to separate mind and matter. And he talked about the fact that that's an illusion, that it's all one thing. And somehow that spoke to me in particular about my relationship with Kenny. So I'd already been working on a flag that centered Kenny in it, but I didn't have the language for it until I heard Peter talking. And so I used him as my central image. And I don't know if can people see this.
Yeah, that's good, yeah.
Yeah. So this is a picture of Kenny right when I met him, and he loves being outdoors. it's a really important thing for him to be in nature, and he was deprived of it for so long. I mean, other than like a walk around the block. And we started taking him out to the arboretum and to the woods, and the joy that he experienced was just so unfiltered. And that's sort of a joyful side of him that I see pretty regularly when we're together. And so we have this powerful relationship that has very little to do with words. And it, you know, I was so grateful for Peter's framing of this idea that knowing is so much beyond that. I mean, it's sort of like we probably know that in our hearts, but it was an important reminder, especially in a time when COVID sort of robs us of serenity, and that everything seems so hard because we're dealing with a material world in such a different way, not to mention um, worrying about our welfare and the welfare of others. So this is Kenny, and it's absolutely my favorite. I have like hundreds of pictures of him. This is my favorite. So